Go ahead, Marco Vitale said, pressing the pistol against Clara Hayes's temple. Call him. Let the city's monster hear you beg. The abandoned warehouse smelled of rain oil and rust. Clara stood beneath broken lights with her wrists tied. 20 feet away, her mother trembled in a metal chair, an oxygen tube beneath her nose. Clara's younger brother was on his knees beside her, blood on his lip. Armed men watched from the shadows. On a crate near Clara's feet sat a plain cardboard food box. It was stained by rain and tied with white kitchen string. To everyone else it looked like trash. But when the tall man in the black coat entered alone, his eyes went to that box before they went to the gun. Marco noticed. There it is, he said. That stupid little weakness. The man stopped inside the loading door. Rainwater ran from his coat onto the concrete. No bodyguards, no visible weapon. Yet half the room shifted as if something dangerous had entered with him. Release them, he said. His voice was quiet. Marco laughed and dragged Clara closer, still giving orders. You walked into a trap because a broke waitress once handed you leftovers under a leaking awning. Clara's mother stared at the stranger in black, confused. Her brother lifted his head. Clara understood only one thing. Whatever this man truly was, Marco hated him enough to destroy everyone she loved. Marco kicked the food box from the crate. It hit the floor, burst open, and spilled a folded napkin beside a cold piece of bread. The man's expression did not change, but his right hand closed once at his side. Marco smiled. The most feared man in this city brought to his knees by one meal. A camera light blinked red from a tripod near the wall. Marco wanted this recorded. He wanted every witness to carry the story into the rooms where power was traded in whispers. He wanted humiliation before death. Clara refused to cry for him. Leo, she said, using the only name he had ever given her. You shouldn't have come. Something passed between them, small, almost invisible. Marco shoved the muzzle harder against her. Tell him the rest. Clara kept her gaze on Leo. Tell my mother I'm sorry I missed dinner. Her mother made a broken sound. Clara, no. But Leo's focus sharpened. It sounded like an ordinary sentence, a frightened daughter saying goodbye. Except Clara never missed dinner without calling. And the first night she met Leo, she had spoken of dinner just before giving away the only food she had. His eyes dropped briefly to her bound hands. One loop of rope sat looser than the others. Clara had been working it free against a jagged screw behind her. Marco did not know that. He also did not know she had moved herself between the gunman and Leo inch by inch, pretending her knees were failing. He thought she was helpless. She was frightened. She was not helpless. Marco raised his voice for the camera. Tonight everyone learns what kindness costs. Then he struck Clara across the face. Her mother screamed. Her brother lunged and was thrown back by a guard. Leo moved one step. 6 rifles lifted toward his chest. Don't, Clara warned. Marco grinned. She made your own people doubt you. She made your enemies smell weakness. Before this night is over, she'll be the reason you lose everything. He pulled back the hammer of the pistol. A chair scraped near the wall. One of Marco's men glanced toward the loading door, where distant blue light flickered across the rain. Another checked his phone and found no signal. The camera kept recording. Marco's smile faltered. Clara felt the final strand of rope slide across her skin. Leo's voice dropped lower. You still think the meal made me weak? Marco tightened his grip on her. Leo's eyes met Clara's. No, he said. It reminded me what I had already lost. Marco began to pull the trigger. Clara moved. And before anyone in that warehouse understood what she had chosen to do, the cardboard box lay open between them, the smallest gift in the room, and the one thing about to cost Marco Vitale his empire. But to understand why, we have to go back to a cold, rain-soaked night, when Clara Hayes had one meal left, no money to spare, and no idea who was waiting beneath the awning. 6 weeks earlier, Clara Hayes was wiping coffee from a chipped counter at Miller's Diner when her manager told her she would not be paid for the extra 3 hours she had worked. "You clocked out at 10, he said, counting bills beside the register. "You told me to stay and close, and you stayed. That was your decision." Clara held his gaze for a moment, then folded the wet cloth in half. Arguing would not put the money in her pocket. It might only cost her tomorrow's shift. Outside, the old neighborhood had already gone dark. Half the storefronts were empty, and rainwater gathered in the cracks of the sidewalk. Clara changed out of her stained apron in the employee restroom and counted what remained in her wallet. $23. Rent was due in 4 days. Her mother's prescription cost $38. The hospital had called twice that afternoon about an unpaid balance. Clara removed $5 for the bus and placed the rest inside a white envelope marked Mom. Then she checked the small paper bag the cook had slipped her before leaving. A turkey sandwich, an apple, a cup of soup sealed beneath plastic wrap. Her only meal since breakfast. She carried it carefully beneath her coat as she walked toward the bus stop. The rain had grown colder, blown sideways by the wind. Every shop awning leaked. Every traffic light reflected red across the pavement. Clara nearly passed the man without seeing him. He sat beneath the narrow cover of a closed pharmacy, shoulders bent, one hand pressed against his ribs. His coat was too thin for the weather and torn along the sleeve. Mud darkened his trousers. A bruise spread across one side of his face. Blood covered his knuckles. Clara slowed. The man raised his eyes. There was nothing weak in them. Even exhausted, even injured, he watched the street like someone measuring exits. His gaze moved from Clara to the bus stop, then to the dark sedan passing at the far end of the block. Clara tightened her grip on the food bag. She had learned to be careful. Kindness did not mean ignoring danger. It meant seeing danger clearly and choosing what kind of person to be anyway. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "I'll live." His voice was rough but controlled. "That wasn't my question." He studied her more closely. "You should keep walking." Clara noticed the blood seeping between his fingers. She also noticed that his shoes, though soaked and scuffed, were expensive. The coat looked cheap, but the watch-shaped pale mark around his wrist suggested something valuable had recently been removed. "You were robbed," she said. A faint smile touched his mouth and disappeared. Something like that. Another vehicle moved slowly through the intersection. The man lowered his head until it passed. Clara should have left. Her bus would arrive soon. Her stomach had been aching for an hour. At home, the electricity had been shut off in the kitchen, and the eviction notice taped to her door was now 3 days old. She opened the paper bag. The smell of warm soup escaped into the rain. The man's gaze shifted toward it before he could stop himself. Clara took out the container and sandwich. Hunger made her hesitate. For one painful second, she imagined eating at the bus stop, feeling warmth return to her hands, saving the apple for morning. Then she crouched and held the bag toward him. "I don't have much," she said, "but at least tonight you don't have to be hungry." The man did not accept it. "Why?" "Because you need it. You do too." Clara gave a tired laugh. "You're not supposed to notice that part." He continued watching her, as though kindness were a trick he had not yet understood. At last, he took the bag. His fingers brushed hers. They were cold, but his grip was steady. "What's your name?" Clara asked. A pause followed. "Leo." It was close enough to the truth to leave his mouth without effort. "Clara." He opened the soup, but did not eat immediately. "You give food to strangers often, only the charming ones." The answer surprised a quiet breath of amusement from him. Clara rose, then saw him sway as he tried to shift against the wall. His face tightened. Beneath the torn coat, a dark stain spread along his shirt. "That is not a robbery injury." Leo covered it with his hand. "Go home, Clara. You need a hospital." "No hospitals." "Then the police." "No police." The firmness in his voice confirmed what she already feared. He was running from someone, perhaps from several people. The bus appeared at the end of the street. Clara could still leave. She could ride home, drink water, and sleep beneath 2 blankets until her alarm rang at 5. She could tell herself that she had done enough. Leo lifted the sandwich but stopped when distant tires hissed against wet pavement. A black car slowed near the corner. His entire body changed. The injured stranger vanished. In his place was a man prepared to fight with an empty hand. The car continued past. Only then did he breathe again. Clara watched the bus pull to the curb. Its doors opened. The driver waited. She thought of her mother, who had once divided a single bowl of soup between 2 children and claimed she was not hungry. Clara had been 9, but she remembered the lie. The bus doors closed. It moved on without her. "My apartment is 2 blocks away," she said. Leo's expression hardened. "You don't know me. That makes 2 of us. You could be bringing danger into your home." Clara glanced at the blood on his hand. "The danger is already here." She helped him stand. He was taller than she expected, broad beneath the ruined coat, and far heavier than he looked. Yet he made almost no sound, despite the pain. They moved through the rain together. Clara's building was a narrow brick structure above a laundromat. The hallway smelled of bleach and old pipes. An eviction notice waited on her door in a bright yellow envelope. She tore it down before Leo could read it. Inside the apartment held 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, and furniture collected from sidewalks and church donations. A framed sketch of a bakery hung above the table. Beneath it sat a jar labeled "Clara's Dream Empty," except for 3 coins. "Sit," she said. Leo remained standing until he had checked the window, the fire escape, and the lock. Clara noticed. Military number police. His eyes met hers. Definitely not. She brought out an old first aid kit and cut the fabric around his wound. The bullet had passed through his side, leaving torn flesh, but no visible fragment. Clara's hands paused. "You were shot." "So it seems. People usually react more strongly to that. People usually ask fewer questions." She cleaned the wound while he gripped the edge of the table. He did not cry out. He only watched the door each time pipes knocked inside the wall. When she finished, Clara gave him the couch and placed a kitchen knife beneath the cushion where he could see it. "It's not much," she said, "but it may help you sleep." Leo examined her face, uncertain whether to be insulted or impressed. Clara went to her bedroom and closed the door. She did not sleep. Her stomach cramped as she drank water from the bathroom tap. In the next room, Leo sat awake beneath a thin blanket, listening to the apartment settle. Near midnight, he noticed the papers Clara had left on the table. The hospital bill, the prescription receipt, the final eviction warning, and beside them, an old drawing of a bakery with Clara's name written above the door. Leo stared at the empty food bag in his hands. She had known exactly what she was giving away. For years he had trusted men who swore loyalty with one hand while hiding knives in the other. A few hours earlier, someone inside his own organization had proven how little those promises were worth. Yet this woman who had almost nothing had given him the only thing she had, without asking who he was, what he could offer, or whether he deserved it. Outside, another black sedan passed through the rain. Leo moved to the window. Somewhere in the city, the men who had betrayed him believed Leonardo Moretti was wounded alone and soon to be dead. They were right about the first two things. By morning, they would learn how wrong they were about the third. Clara woke to the sound of engines. Not one car, several. She crossed the apartment in borrowed silence and found Leo already standing near the window. He had removed the blood-stained bandage and buttoned his torn shirt as neatly as the damage allowed. Below, 3 black vehicles had stopped along the curb. Men in dark coats stepped into the morning rain. 2 checked the street. Another entered the building without knocking. Clara backed away from the window. "Friends of yours?" Leo's expression gave her no answer. Heavy footsteps climbed the stairs. Clara reached for the kitchen knife she had left beneath the couch cushion, but Leo covered her hand before she could draw it. "If they meant to kill me," he said, "we would not have heard them coming." The lock clicked. A broad man with silver at his temples entered first. The moment he saw Leo, relief broke through his rigid face. "Mr. Moretti." He lowered his head. The others followed. Every armed man in Clara's apartment bowed to the homeless stranger she had found beneath a pharmacy awning. No one spoke until Leo did. "Who survived?" "Most of the North crew," the silver-haired man replied. "The rest are waiting for your orders." "And Marco missing?" Leo's jaw tightened. Clara still held the knife. One of the men noticed and reached beneath his coat. Leo's voice cut across the room. "Do that and you lose the hand." The man froze. Clara stared at Leo. "Mr. Moretti." The name settled slowly. Leonardo Moretti. It appeared in newspaper stories without photographs. It moved through the neighborhood in warnings, lowered voices, and businesses that closed after refusing the wrong offer. People said judges feared him, police avoided him, and men disappeared after speaking against him. Clara had brought him into her home. She had cleaned blood from his skin. She had given him a knife. The silver-haired man opened a garment bag. Inside waited a black suit-pressed shirt and polished shoes. Another placed a phone and watch on the table. Leo disappeared into the bathroom. When he returned, there was no trace of the man beneath the awning except the bruising on his face. The suit fit perfectly. The watch alone was likely worth more than Clara's apartment. Even his posture had changed. Or perhaps she was finally seeing it. His men cleared a path to the door. Leo stopped beside the table and placed a card near the empty food bag. It contained only a name and a telephone number embossed in black. "From today forward," he said, "if you need anything, call." Clara picked up the card. "Is that how this works?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "How what works?" "I feed you, and you buy the right to feel repaid." The men near the door exchanged uneasy glances. Leo was not accustomed to being questioned. Clara could see it in the stillness that followed. "I owe you my life. You owe me nothing. I decide what I owe, and I decide whether I'm for sale." A smile almost appeared, but it carried no warmth. "You misunderstand me. Then explain." He glanced at the hospital bill on the table, then toward the eviction notice Clara had torn down and left near the trash. Her face heated. Leo reached inside his coat and removed a thick fold of cash. Clara did not touch it. I gave you food because you were hungry, she said. Not because I expected the richest criminal in the city to walk into my apartment the next morning. One of the men shifted at the word criminal. Leo remained calm. You should be careful with names you cannot prove. I should be careful with strangers carrying bullet wounds. I'm learning. He returned the money to his pocket. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Leo nodded toward the card. Keep that, not as payment. As what a door. Clara set it inside the empty dream jar with the 3 coins. I'm not promising to open it. Leo left without another word. The convoy pulled away, leaving the old street strangely quiet. By 10, Clara was back at Miller's diner. Her manager, Ray Miller, waited beside the register with her timesheet in his hand. He was a thick-necked man who smiled for customers and whispered insults where they could not hear. You're late. 8 minutes. 8 minutes I paid someone else to cover. You didn't pay me for 3 hours last night. Ray's smile thinned. Then perhaps we're even. Clara tied on her apron. At noon, a man sleeping near the bus depot entered and asked for water. Ray ordered him out before he reached the counter. Clara filled a paper cup and added 2 rolls from a returned basket. Ray knocked the cup from her hand. Water spread across the floor. I don't run a shelter. He wasn't asking for money. He was making paying customers uncomfortable. The man crouched to pick up the rolls. Ray crushed one beneath his shoe. Clara's hand paused around the towel. The diner fell quieter, though no one intervened. She replaced the rolls with a wrapped sandwich from her own employee meal and handed it to the man. Ray seized her wrist. Do that again and you're gone. Clara pulled free. Then take it out of my pay. I already do. A few customers lowered their eyes. Ray leaned close enough for only her to hear. You need this job more than I need you. Remember that. He was right. That afternoon, the hospital called while Clara balanced 3 plates on one arm. Her mother's treatment had been delayed again. The insurance authorization was incomplete. A deposit would be required before the next procedure. Clara had 72 hours to arrange payment. She stood in the kitchen doorway while orders rang behind her. How much? The amount was more than she earned in 3 months. Her mother came on the line. Clara, don't panic. I can wait. You've already waited. I'm feeling better. They both knew it was another lie. Clara promised she would handle it, ended the call, and returned to work before Ray could accuse her of wasting time. Across the city, Leonardo Moretti sat at the head of a polished table while 12 men reported on the attempt against his life. He listened without interrupting. The ambush had required access to his route security rotation and private meeting schedule. Only a handful of people possessed all 3. Marco Vitale was one of them. Marco had advised Leo for 15 years. He had stood beside him at funerals, negotiated peace with rival families, and once taken a knife meant for Leo. Now he had vanished. Find him, Leo said. The silver-haired man, Vincent Russo, placed a folder on the table. There is another matter. Inside were photographs of Clara leaving the diner, entering the hospital, and visiting her mother's apartment. Leo's voice cooled. Why was she followed to make certain no one else reached her first? The answer was reasonable. Leo disliked it anyway. Vincent opened the folder further. Her landlord filed for eviction. The diner owes employees back wages. Her mother's treatment is being delayed over unpaid balances. Leo saw a photograph of Ray grabbing Clara's wrist. A chair creaked beneath his hand. Resolve it. How directly, not directly. Leo did not want Clara's gratitude. He did not want her fear either. He wanted the problems removed without his name attached. By the end of the week, a charitable medical fund contacted the hospital and covered Clara's mother's deposit. A city labor investigator arrived at Miller's diner after receiving records of unpaid overtime. Ray was ordered to preserve payroll files pending review. Clara's landlord received notice that the building's permits and tenant accounts would be audited. Each problem shifted at once, too neatly. When Clara asked the hospital for the charity's name, the clerk could only tell her the donation had been made through an anonymous foundation. When she returned home, the eviction notice had been withdrawn. Inside the dream jar, Leo's black card waited beside the 3 coins. Clara held it under the kitchen light. She still did not call. Then her younger brother arrived with a split eyebrow and fear he tried to hide. "A group near school wants me to carry packages for them," he admitted. I said no. Clara cleaned the cut above his eye. "What happens if you say no again?" He did not answer. Across the street, a black sedan sat beneath a broken street lamp. Its engine was running. Clara went to the window, but the car pulled away before she could see who was inside. For the first time since Leo had left, she understood that his card might not only be a door, it might also be a warning. Clara called the number on Leo's card the next morning. It rang once. "Where are you?" Leo asked. No greeting. No hesitation. Clara glanced at her brother asleep on the couch with an ice pack against his eyebrow. "How did you know it was me? I know who has that number." She disliked how easily he made concern sound like surveillance. "My brother is being threatened by a gang near his school," she said. "I'm not asking you to hurt anyone." A pause. "What are you asking for it to stop?" "It will, legally." Leo's voice cooled. "You called the wrong man for legal solutions. Then I called the wrong man." She ended the call. Her hand shook afterward, though she could not decide whether it came from anger or fear. By that evening, the men near her brother's school were gone. No bodies were found. No arrests were reported. They simply abandoned the corner the apartment they used and every package hidden inside it. Clara's brother returned to class. When she confronted Leo by phone, he denied giving an order. "I said the problem would be resolved." "That isn't an answer. It is the only one you need." Clara held the receiver tighter. "You keep changing my life without asking permission. I'm keeping you alive. You don't get to decide those are the same thing." Leo ended the call first. 3 nights later, Clara left the diner after another double shift. The labor investigation had made Ray more careful in public, but crueler when no one was listening. He reduced her hours, blamed her for missing tips, and warned the other employees that cooperation with investigators would cost them their jobs. Clara began writing down every shift, withheld payment, and threat in a small notebook. It was not dramatic evidence. It was only dates, hours, and names. But it was hers. She had spent years surviving quietly. Now she was building a record. The street behind the diner was nearly empty when a gray van stopped beside her. The side door opened. 2 men pulled her inside before she could scream. A cloth covered her mouth. A plastic tie cut into her wrists. One of the men took her phone and removed the battery. "You people have made a mistake," Clara said when the cloth came off. The man across from her smiled. No. Moretti did. They drove for 20 minutes and brought her into an auto shop closed for the night. Tools hung in neat rows along the walls. A single security camera blinked above the office door. Clara's fear sharpened into attention. 2 exits. 4 men. 1 camera. a telephone on the office desk. The leader wore a gold ring shaped like a wolf's head. "You're going to call Leo. You'll tell him to come alone. I barely know him. You fed him. He paid your bills. He removed people who bothered your family." Clara's stomach tightened. They knew everything. One of the men opened her bag and found Leo's card. "Barely knows him." Clara kept her voice level. "He offered help." "I refused. Men like Moretti don't offer." The leader placed a phone in front of her and dialed. Leo answered before the second ring. "Clara." The leader nodded for her to speak. She heard something dangerous beneath Leo's calm. He already knew she was not calling freely. "I'm fine," Clara said. The man with the wolf ring pressed a knife beneath her chin. Clara continued, "I missed dinner again." Silence filled the line. Then Leo said, "Put the man in charge on the phone." The leader smiled and took it. "Warehouse District. Auto shop on Mercer, 1 hour. Bring no more than 2 men." "You have 10 minutes to release her," Leo replied. "You're in no position to give orders." A metallic click sounded through the phone. Perhaps a weapon being loaded. Perhaps only a warning. "You used her to reach me," Leo said. "That was your final mistake." The call ended. The kidnappers expected Leo to arrive angry. He arrived organized. The power failed first. Then the security camera went dark. A vehicle crashed through the rear door while gunfire shattered the front windows. Clara dropped behind the office desk as men shouted through smoke and broken glass. The plastic tie around her wrists had loosened against the sharp corner of a drawer. She pulled until skin tore and one hand slipped free. A kidnapper grabbed her hair. Clara drove the heel of her shoe into his knee, seized the telephone from the desk, and struck him across the jaw. He collapsed against a cabinet. She did not wait to be rescued. Clara crawled toward the side exit as armed men flooded the shop. Leo entered through the smoke in a dark coat, flanked by Vincent and 2 others. His face held no panic. That frightened her more than rage would have. The man with the wolf ring fired. Leo moved before the shot returned fire and struck him in the shoulder. Within seconds, the remaining kidnappers were disarmed and forced to their knees. Clara reached the doorway. "Are you hurt?" Leo demanded. "Not badly." He checked her face and wrists, then removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. Behind them, the wounded leader laughed through clenched teeth. "Marco said she'd make you careless." Leo became still. "Marco sent you." The man's smile answered. Leo drew his pistol and pressed it against his forehead. Clara saw the change in the room. His men expected the shot. The kidnappers expected it too. Perhaps this was how Leo's world worked. One betrayal paid for by another death. One act of fear creating the next. "Leo," Clara said. He did not respond. She moved between him and the man on the floor. Vincent caught his breath. No one else dared speak. "Move," Leo ordered. "No. This man helped abduct you, and you saved me. That does not erase what he did. It also doesn't give you the right to execute him in front of me." The wounded man stared up at her, astonished. Leo's grip tightened around the weapon. "You think mercy will change him? I don't know. Then why risk it, because I refuse to let what he did decide who I become." The pistol remained raised. Clara could feel every armed man waiting to see whether Leonardo Moretti would allow a waitress to challenge him in front of his own crew. Her voice softened. "If you kill him now, then this rescue was never about saving me. It was about protecting your pride." Leo's eyes hardened. For one terrible second, Clara believed she had gone too far. Then he lowered the gun. "Take them alive," he told Vincent. No one moved immediately. Leo's voice sharpened. "Did I stutter?" His men pulled the kidnappers to their feet. The man with the wolf ring began to laugh again. She's already changed you. Leo struck him once hard enough to silence him, but did not fire. On the drive away, Clara sat beside Leo in the rear of an armored car. His coat remained around her shoulders. Her wrists burned where the plastic had cut them. "You knew what I meant when I said I missed dinner," she said. "I knew you were warning me. And you brought an army. 4 men. That is an army in my world." Leo watched the city pass beyond the dark glass. "Your world nearly got you killed tonight." "No. Your world nearly got me killed." The words landed cleanly. Leo did not argue. He took her to his estate outside the city instead of her apartment. Iron gates opened before the convoy. Security cameras tracked every vehicle along a road lined with old trees. The mansion beyond them was enormous and silent, filled with stone floors, guarded doors, and rooms no one seemed to use. Clara stopped inside the entrance. "I'm going home. You are not safe there. That isn't your decision. Marco knows where you live. He knows your family. Until I find him, you stay here." Clara pulled his coat from her shoulders and handed it back. "Am I a guest?" "Yes." "Then guests can leave." Leo's expression closed. Not tonight. There it was. The rule beneath every favor. He had paid bills, removed threats, and rescued her, but each act came with invisible walls. Leo believed protection gave him authority. In his world, perhaps, it always had. Clara walked past him and opened the front door. 2 guards blocked her path. She faced Leo again. "You're not protecting me," she said. "You're imprisoning me somewhere expensive." His voice dropped. "Kindness made you visible to men who would use you." "No. Your enemies made me visible. You do not understand how dangerous this is, and you don't understand that fear doesn't make every choice for me." Leo dismissed the guards with a glance, but the gates outside remained closed. Clara stayed because her family was exposed, not because he ordered it. That distinction mattered. Before going upstairs, she placed her small notebook on the hall table. Leo noticed the pages filled with Ray's unpaid wages and threats. What is that my way of handling a problem without making people disappear? For the first time that night, uncertainty crossed his face. Clara took back the notebook. "You use fear because it's fast," she said. "But fast isn't the same as right." She walked away, leaving Leo alone beneath the chandelier. Behind him, Vincent entered with news from the captured men. Marco was alive. He was building support inside Leo's organization. And he had already begun telling people that Clara Hayes was not an innocent woman caught between enemies. She was the reason Leonardo Moretti could no longer be trusted. Life inside Leo's estate was comfortable in every way that made Clara uncomfortable. Meals appeared before she asked. Doors opened before she touched them. Men outside her room changed shifts every 4 hours, pretending not to be guards. Her mother and brother had been moved to a secure apartment nearby. Leo called it temporary protection. Clara called it proof that Marco had already taken control of their lives. She refused the clothes Leo's staff bought for her. She refused the jewelry left on her dresser. When a new phone appeared, she used it only to call her family and the hospital. Most mornings she found Leo in the study before sunrise, surrounded by reports and men who lowered their voices when she entered. He was dismantling Marco's support one name at a time. Yet something else had begun to shift. The kidnappers from the auto shop had been delivered anonymously to the police with enough evidence to hold them. The gang that threatened Clara's brother was not found dead in an alley. Its leaders were arrested after police received the location of their weapons and narcotics. Leo never admitted changing his methods. Clara never stopped noticing. One evening, she entered the estate kitchen and found him standing over a pot of sauce. He held a wooden spoon as if it were a weapon from an unfamiliar country. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Cooking. You're threatening tomatoes." His mouth moved slightly. The chef left instructions. Clara checked the counter. "Those instructions say low heat. The flame is low. The sauce is smoking." Together, they rescued what remained. Leo removed his jacket and rolled his sleeves while Clara chopped onions. Without the armed men and black cars, he seemed less like a legend and more like someone who had never been allowed to make ordinary mistakes. "My mother cooked when there was food," he said. Clara waited. He rarely offered anything personal without being pushed. She used to say hunger made people reveal themselves. Some became cruel. Some shared. His hand paused above the stove. "The last winter she was alive, we had one piece of bread. She told me she had already eaten." Clara understood the memory before he explained it. "The meal under the awning," she said. Leo nodded. "You used the same lie." For a moment, the mansion disappeared. There was only a hungry boy, a tired mother, and a piece of bread divided by love. "What happened to her?" Clara asked. "She became sick. The clinic wanted payment before treatment. By the time I found the money, it was too late. I'm sorry. I stopped being sorry a long time ago." "No," Clara said softly. "You stopped showing it." He met her eyes. That night, they ate at the kitchen counter instead of the formal dining room. Leo admitted that a foundation connected to him funded a small soup kitchen on the south side. "Why keep it secret?" Clara asked. "People would assume I wanted praise." "Do you know?" "Then let them assume." He gave a quiet laugh. It was the closest either of them came to acknowledging what was growing between them. The next morning, Marco attacked without firing a shot. Anonymous messages reached Leo's senior men. Photographs showed Clara entering the hospital after her mother's bills had been paid. Copies of financial records suggested her mother had once worked for a company tied to one of Leo's rivals. The implication was simple. Clara had not found Leo by chance. She had been placed in his path. Vincent brought the documents into the study. "The dates appear legitimate." "Appear?" Leo asked. "The company existed. Her mother was employed there." Leo read the name twice. Years earlier, that company had moved money for the organization that ordered his father's death. Clara entered while the room was still full. Conversation stopped. She saw the papers in Leo's hand and the suspicion already settling across several faces. What happened? Leo dismissed everyone except Vincent. Then he placed the documents on the desk. "Your mother worked for Adrian Cole's company." Clara scanned the first page. She was a bookkeeper. She worked for dozens of companies. She had access to private accounts. She entered invoices. "You expect me to believe she knew nothing?" Clara raised her eyes. "I expect you to ask before accusing her." "I am asking." "No. You decided before I entered the room." Leo's voice became colder. "Did she ever mention Cole?" "No." "Did she know who I was before the night we met? My mother had never heard your name from me." "That was not the question." Clara stared at him. The fragile trust between them did not break loudly. It cracked through each measured word. "You think I gave away my dinner as part of a plan. I think coincidence is a luxury men like me cannot afford. And women like me cannot afford dinner, apparently. Yet here we are." Vincent lowered his gaze. Leo continued. "Marco knew where to find you too quickly. He knew about your family, your debts, and your connection to me. Because your people followed me." Silence changed the room. Leo's expression tightened. Clara pushed the documents back toward him. "You investigated everything about my life. You watched my home. You paid my bills without permission. Now you're using what you found to prove I'm guilty of something. I am trying to keep control of a situation that is all you ever do." She removed the phone he had given her and placed it beside the papers. Then she took a small velvet box from her pocket, the bracelet his staff had insisted she accept for security tracking. It joined the phone. "I don't want any of it." "Clara. The apartment, the doctors, the protection. I'll repay whatever I can. This is not about money. It became about money the moment you decided it could explain me." Leo came around the desk. "Leaving now would be dangerous. Staying with someone who does not trust me is dangerous too." His pride rose before his honesty could. "I cannot ignore evidence because of how I feel." Clara's face softened with hurt. "That is the first truthful thing you've said." She walked toward the door. Leo could have stopped her. One command would have closed every gate on the property. He gave no command. Clara paused without facing him. "I gave you a meal when you had nothing," she said. "If you still think I came here for money, then you never understood me." The door closed behind her. Leo remained beside the desk as the sound of her footsteps faded through the hall. Vincent waited several seconds. "Do you want me to stop the car?" "No." It was the answer Leo regretted before he finished saying it. Clara returned every gift she could identify. She moved back into her apartment, resumed her shifts at the diner, and sat beside her mother during treatments funded by the anonymous foundation. She told herself that Leo had been right about one thing. Their worlds did not belong together. 3 days later, Vincent entered Leo's study, carrying the original employment records from Clara's mother's former company. The documents Marco circulated were altered, he said. Leo read them in silence. The dates had been changed. Account permissions had been added years after the records were created. Clara's mother had never handled the private ledgers. She had left the company before it became connected to coal. Marco had built the lie from one real fact and trusted Leo's suspicion to complete it. On the final page, investigators found a digital signature linked to Marco's accountant. Supporting proof. Undeniable. Leo closed the file. He had survived Bullet's betrayals and years of men trying to exploit every weakness. Marco had discovered the easiest way to defeat him. He had simply given Leo a reason to destroy his own happiness. That evening, Clara finished her shift and walked toward the hospital carrying 2 cups of coffee. A van waited near the service entrance. She recognized the danger 1 second too late. Her mother's nurse called 20 minutes later. Clara had never arrived. Her mother was also missing from her room. Across town, Clara's brother failed to return from school. Leo's private phone rang at 9:17. Clara's name appeared on the screen. When he answered, her voice was steady. "I'm with my mother and my brother," she said. "We're going to have dinner together." Leo rose from his chair. It was the same coded warning she had used before, but this time another voice came through the line. "Marco Vitale. Come to the old warehouse by the river," he said, alone, "or the woman who made you merciful watches her family die first." An hour later, rain struck the warehouse roof as Marco pressed a pistol to Clara's temple. Her mother trembled nearby. Her brother bled from the mouth. A camera recorded everything. Marco kicked a plain food box onto the floor and mocked the meal that had changed the city's most feared man. Clara worked her wrists against a rusted screw behind her. Leo entered alone. Marco struck her, raised the weapon, and told the camera that kindness always carried a price. What he did not know was that Clara had already loosened the rope. He did not see her shifting into the line of fire, and he did not notice the faint blue lights moving through the rain outside until one of his own men reached for a phone that no longer had a signal. Marco pulled back the hammer. A side door opened. Vincent stood there with 2 police detectives and a warrant in his hand. For the first time, Marco's confidence broke, because Leo had not come to the warehouse for revenge. He had come carrying every piece of evidence needed to end Marco Vitale without becoming him. Marco stared at the detectives in the side doorway, then laughed. "A warrant," he said. "You think paper protects anyone in this room?" The 2 officers did not advance. Detective Elena Brooks held the warrant where everyone could see it, while her partner kept both hands near his weapon. Vincent remained beside them. Marco's men raised their rifles. Leo had expected that. "You brought police into family business," Marco said. "Your father would spit on you." "My father trusted you," Leo replied. "That mistake killed him." Marco's smile weakened. The camera near the wall continued recording. Its red light blinked steadily, capturing Clara's bound family, the armed men, and the pistol against her head. Marco pointed toward it. "Good. Let everyone see what you've become." Leonardo Moretti hiding behind badges because a waitress taught him to fear blood. "The camera is no longer sending to your people," Vincent said. Marco glanced at the tripod. Vincent lifted a tablet. On its screen were 12 small windows. Leo's senior captains watched from secure locations across the city. Men Marco had spent weeks turning against Leo were witnessing the warehouse in real time. Marco recovered quickly. "Then they'll see him choose an outsider over his own organization." Detective Brooks spoke from the doorway. "They'll also hear your confession to arranging the ambush." "I confessed to nothing. You described it on camera 12 minutes ago." Marco's eyes moved toward one of his men. The man stopped, meeting his gaze. Vincent had captured the warehouse audio before Leo entered. Marco's boasts about the attack, the kidnappings, and the plan to execute Clara had already been copied outside the building. Still, Marco dismissed it with a shrug. "A recording can be edited. Police can be bought. Witnesses can disappear." One of the captains on Vincent's screen leaned closer to his camera. Then a man kneeling near the warehouse wall spoke. It was the kidnapper with the wolf-shaped ring, his injured arm held in a sling. He had been brought from custody under police protection. "Marco ordered the auto shop abduction," he said. "He gave us Clara's address, her work schedule, and the code to Moretti's private line." Marco's face sharpened. "You are a frightened thief begging for a deal." The man lowered his eyes. "I am." His honesty carried more weight than denial would have. "But he paid us," he continued. "And he promised Moretti would be dead before we could testify." Detective Brooks opened a clear evidence sleeve. Inside was a ledger page bearing Marco's accountant's signature. Vincent addressed the captains watching remotely. The records accusing Clara Hayes and her mother were forged. The original employment files show Mrs. Hayes left the company before it handled any rival accounts. He placed the authentic pages beside the altered copies. The changes were created through Marco's accountant. Payment records connect the same account to the men who attacked Leo's convoy. There it was. One factual trail. One author. The suspicion Marco had planted began collapsing in front of the very men he had intended to recruit. Marco saw it happen. "You believe documents now," he shouted toward the camera. After everything I built with you? You built nothing with them, Leo said. You borrowed my trust. Marco dragged Clara backward, the pistol dug into her skin, and she took it from you. Leo's gaze settled on Clara. The bruising on her cheek had darkened. Blood marked her wrists where she had worked the rope loose. Yet she remained between him and Marco's weapon. Marco mistook her position for fear. You want proof she changed you? He asked. Watch, he fired. Clara tore one hand free and threw herself across Leo's path. The bullet struck beneath her shoulder. For a moment she remained upright, shock widening her eyes. Then Leo caught her before she hit the floor. Gunfire erupted around them. Vincent's men and the detectives returned fire from cover. Marco's remaining guards dropped their weapons or fled toward the rear exit where police units were already entering. Clara pressed one hand against the wound. Blood spread between her fingers. Leo lowered her behind a steel crate. Stay with me. I'm here, she whispered. His face had lost all restraint. He rose and crossed the warehouse through smoke and shouting. Marco fired again, but the pistol clicked empty. Leo struck him to the ground. The weapon slid across the concrete. Marco tried to crawl toward it. Leo stepped on his hand. A cry tore from him. Every captain still watched through the live feed. The police saw it. Clara's mother covered her son's eyes. Leo drew his gun and placed it against Marco's forehead. Marco began to laugh. There you are, he said through bloodied teeth. I knew she couldn't change what you are. Leo's finger tightened near the trigger. He saw the convoy burning in the tunnel. He remembered Marco standing beside him at funerals, calling him brother. He saw Clara beneath the pharmacy awning, hungry and soaked, holding out her last meal to a man who appeared to have nothing. Then he heard her voice behind him. Leo. She was trying to stand. Detective Brooks ordered her to remain still, but Clara pushed against the crate and raised herself enough to be heard. Marco smiled up at Leo. Do it. Clara's breathing came in shallow bursts. If you kill him now, she said, then he still gets to choose who you become. The warehouse quieted around her words. Leo did not lower the weapon. Marco's smile widened. She thinks mercy makes her strong. No, Clara said. Choosing is what makes me strong. She pressed harder against her wound. You accused me of wanting your money. You questioned my mother. You let fear decide what was true. Leo's expression twisted with shame. Clara continued calm despite the pain. I cannot make this choice for you, but I will not build a life beside a man who calls revenge justice. The camera captured her standing without jewelry, wealth, or protection, bleeding, because she had shielded the very man who had doubted her. That was the proof no forged document could imitate. She had given Leo food when she believed he was powerless. She had returned his money when he offered the world. And now she had risked her life when she had every reason to walk away. On Vincent's screen, one captain removed his glasses. Another lowered his head. They understood before Marco did. Clara had never been Leo's weakness. She was the only person in the room strong enough to stop the violence when everyone else expected it. Leo slowly removed the gun from Marco's forehead. Marco's laughter died. No, he said. You don't get to pretend you're better than me. I'm not pretending. Leo stepped back. Detective Brooks approached with handcuffs. Marco lunged for the fallen pistol. Clara saw the movement first. Left Leo kicked the weapon away as Brooks drove Marco against the concrete. Her partner secured his wrists. Marco fought until Vincent placed the forged ledger in front of him. The ambush, kidnapping, conspiracy. Attempted murder, Brooks said. Outside counsel and federal investigators already have copies of the financial records. Nothing in this warehouse can make them disappear. Marco stared toward the camera. The men he had tried to recruit were still watching. "Turn that off," he shouted. No one obeyed. Leo knelt beside Clara as paramedics entered through the loading door. They cut away the fabric around her shoulder and prepared a stretcher. Clara caught Leo's sleeve. "My mother. Safe. My brother safe." Only then did she allow the paramedics to lift her. As they carried her past Marco, he tried once more to regain control. "She'll never belong in your world." Clara's eyes opened. Then his world will have to change. The stretcher continued into the rain. Leo faced the camera. For years he had ruled those watching through fear. A single denial could preserve his image. A threat could force them back into line. Instead, he placed his weapon on the floor. "Marco's accounts routes and businesses are frozen," he said. "No retaliation against his family. No bodies in the street. Anyone involved answers through the evidence we collected," a captain on the screen asked. "And the organization?" Leo glanced toward the ambulance carrying Clara away. "Everything changes." Before the week ended, Marco was charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted murder, and financial crimes connected to the ambush. His assets were frozen, pending investigation. Men who had supported him began cooperating when they learned the warehouse recording existed in several protected copies. Ray Miller's payroll records led to back pay orders for his employees and a formal fraud investigation. Clara's landlord was required to restore tenant deposits and withdraw the eviction after city inspectors documented years of violations. None of it happened through a single phone call. Lawyers filed motions, investigators conducted interviews, hearings were scheduled, but the machinery had finally begun moving in the right direction. At the hospital, Clara woke 2 days after surgery. Leo sat alone beside her bed. No guards stood inside the room. No expensive gifts covered the table. Only 2 plain cardboard food boxes rested between them. Clara noticed them, then noticed the exhaustion in his face. "Did you arrest the tomatoes too?" she asked. A breath of relief escaped him. "Only the guilty ones." She tried to smile, but pain interrupted it. Leo's voice became serious. "Marco is alive. He will stand trial, because I asked. Because you were right." Clara studied him. "That must have hurt. More than the bullet. You weren't shot." "I am aware." She let her head settle into the pillow. Leo placed his black card beside one of the food boxes, the same card she had once kept inside an empty dream jar. "I believed power meant never letting anyone influence my decisions," he said. "Marco used that belief against me. And now I know refusing to change is not strength." Clara closed her fingers around the card, but did not promise anything. Beyond the hospital window, morning light reached across the city. Marco had lost his empire. Leo had kept his life. But the most difficult consequence was still ahead of him. For the first time, Leonardo Moretti would have to prove he could build something without fear. Clara spent 3 weeks recovering. Leo visited every day, but he never arrived with guards inside the hospital, never ordered the nurses around, and never tried to make decisions for her. He brought soup, ordinary coffee, and updates only when she asked. On the morning she was discharged, Clara found him waiting beside the hospital entrance with 2 cardboard food boxes. "No armored car?" she asked. "It's across the street. No convoy 2 blocks away." Clara raised an eyebrow. Leo sighed. "I'm improving gradually." Her mother's condition had stabilized. The treatment fund remained in place, but Clara insisted on learning where every dollar came from. Leo's attorneys created a transparent medical charity with independent oversight and public financial reports. Clara reviewed the documents herself. "No secret accounts," she warned. "No secret accounts." no threats against hospital administrators. They were strongly worded letters. Leo. Legal letters. Her brother returned to school under a community protection program that worked with families, teachers, and local police. He no longer had to scan every corner before entering the building. Ray Miller's diner remained open during the labor investigation, but Ray no longer controlled it. A court-appointed manager supervised payroll, while employees received back wages in scheduled payments. Clara did not return. She had spent too many years keeping someone else's business alive, while her own dream sat inside an empty jar. Marco remained in custody awaiting trial. Prosecutors built their case from the warehouse recording financial records, witness testimony, and evidence connecting him to the ambush. Several of his allies accepted plea agreements. Leo gave investigators what they requested. For a man who had once treated silence as power cooperation, became the first public evidence that his promise to change was more than something spoken beside a hospital bed. The harder work happened inside his own organization. Dangerous operations were shut down. Illegal routes were abandoned. Businesses used to hide money were separated, audited, or sold. Employees willing to work legally were offered positions in construction, transportation, security, and property management. Some men left. Some threatened rebellion. Leo did not pretend transformation came without risk, but he refused to answer every challenge with a grave. Months after the warehouse, he took Clara back to the pharmacy awning where they had first met. The building was still closed. Rain had begun falling softly over the old neighborhood, and water dripped through the same crack above the sidewalk. Leo wore a plain coat. There were no visible guards, no polished convoy, and no expensive restaurant reservation. He carried 2 food boxes tied with white string. They sat beneath the awning. Inside were turkey sandwiches, apples, and cups of soup. Clara smiled. "You remembered. I remember everything about that night." Leo placed his box between them without opening it. "I spent my life believing money could prevent helplessness," he said. "Then I lost my money, my weapon, and every person I trusted within a few hours. You still had your charming personality. I was hoping you had forgotten that part. I remember everything, too." His smile faded. "I accused you because fear was easier than trust. I protected you by taking away your choices. I called it safety because admitting the truth would have meant seeing what I had become." Clara listened without rescuing him from the silence. Leo continued. "That night you thought you gave a stranger a meal, but you gave me something money and power never bought me." His voice lowered. "Hope." Clara reached for his hand. "I forgive you," she said. "But forgiveness is not permission to become the same man again." "I know. You prove it every day." "I will. One day at a time." Leo nodded. One day at a time. A year after the shooting, the old bakery on Mercer Street reopened. The painted sign above the door read, "Clara's Table." In the mornings, it sold bread pies, coffee, and cakes. In the evenings, the rear dining room became a community kitchen, serving free meals to anyone who needed one. No separate entrance, no questions about income. No one was made to feel ashamed for being hungry. Clara ran the business herself. Leo financed the renovation through a documented loan she insisted on repaying. He complained about the interest rate until she reminded him that legitimate businessmen were expected to read contracts before signing them. The charity connected to the bakery funded shelter beds, medical care, and job training across the neighborhood. Leo named it after his mother. Her name appeared above the entrance to the first shelter, not his. Clara's mother attended the bakery opening in a wheelchair, healthier than she had been in years. Her brother served coffee before leaving early to study for an exam. Leo stayed in the background while Clara cut the ribbon. The neighborhood had not forgotten what he once was. Some residents remained cautious. Others refused to trust him at all. Leo accepted that trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned slowly, without applause. Near closing time, he entered the kitchen, carrying a familiar cardboard box. Clara untied the white string. Inside was a plain turkey sandwich. Beside it rested a small ring. Leo lowered himself onto one knee. The volunteers stopped working. Clara's mother covered her mouth. Her brother lifted his phone, then lowered it when Clara glared at him. Leo held the ring between his fingers. "The last time you shared your final meal with me," he said. "This time, will you share your life with me?" Clara let him wait long enough to become nervous. "Yes." Relief softened the face that had once frightened an entire city. Clara slipped the ring onto her finger. "But you still have to wash dishes." Leo glanced toward the mountain of plates beside the sink. "I was afraid there would be conditions. There are always conditions." He removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Together they returned to work. Later that evening, Clara carried 2 bowls of soup into the dining room. A young boy sitting with his father watched her serve a man who had entered wearing wet clothes and broken shoes. "Why do you give food to strangers?" the boy asked. "What if you don't have enough?" Clara crouched beside him. "Because sometimes the smallest thing we give can save someone," she said. "Even when we never find out." Across the room, Leo handed a warm meal to an elderly man and treated him with the same respect he once demanded for himself. Then he joined Clara and took her hand. Outside, rain touched the bakery windows. Inside, no one was hungry. The man who had once ruled through fear now stood behind a serving counter, quietly giving away hot meals beside the woman who had taught him that kindness was not weakness. It was a choice. And sometimes one compassionate choice can change not only a life, but an entire city. What would you have done if Clara's last meal had been yours? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and the quiet choices that reveal who we truly are.